Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really different way of looking at weight. It's a perspective that says the number on the scale isn't just about what you eat or how much you exercise, but about a much, much deeper story that your body is trying to tell. You know this feeling, right? So many of us do. You're dieting, you're hitting the gym, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but the weight just won't budge. It honestly feels like your own body is fighting you every step of the way. It's this incredibly frustrating loop, and logic just doesn't seem to cut it. So here's the big idea, the one that kind of flips everything on its head. What if that excess weight isn't a sign of weakness at all? What if it's actually a form of protection? This is the core question from a framework called Desprogramación Evolutiva, or evolutionary deprogramming. It suggests that being overweight or having sobrepeso might just be your body's brilliant, unconscious solution to a problem you don't even realize is there. All right, so let's get into how this actually works. The whole theory is built on this really fascinating principle that the world you experience on the outside is a direct reflection of what's happening in your inner world. What this means is basically everything you see and experience, it's a projection of what's going on inside your own mind, especially your unconscious. Your body is always listening, and it translates the emotional weight of what happens in your life into real biological responses. It literally becomes a living symbol of your inner story. And that brings us to the key point here. Excess weight isn't a failure. It's seen as a survival program. When your unconscious mind senses a threat, maybe a feeling of being attacked or just completely unprotected, it can trigger a program to build a literal layer of defense, a symbolic suit of armor made of fat. And this is where you can really see the difference. It's a total shift in perspective. The conventional view, it's all about the physical stuff, calories, willpower, your genes. But this other view looks inward. It says the real cause isn't physical, it's symbolic. It's about deep unconscious wounds like abandonment, humiliation, or even trauma passed down from your ancestors. Okay, so if the body's protecting itself, what's the threat? Where does it even come from? Well, the search begins by digging into your own life story, often going way, way back to your childhood to find that original emotional trigger. Now, this is fascinating. To track down where it all started, the sources suggest this investigative tool called the kilogram for a year method. The idea is you figure out how many kilos you are over your ideal weight. Each one of those kilos could symbolically represent a year of your life, pointing you to the exact age when a really important emotional event got locked away in your unconscious. And when you start digging, this approach says you'll often find one of three specific emotional wounds at the root of it all. There's abandonment, that deep-seated fear of being alone. There's humiliation, feeling shamed in a way that makes your body want to build that protective armor. And there's rejection, a feeling so deep that you're unworthy, it makes your body want to take up more space just to prove that you exist. I mean, just imagine your unconscious as this super secure vault. It locks away all these painful memories to help you survive the moment. But the thing is, the emotional energy from those events, it doesn't just vanish. It stays active, and it can show up physically, for example, as extra weight. But here's where it gets even deeper. Because sometimes, the story doesn't even start with you. According to this way of thinking, the weight we carry might not even be our own. This brings us to the next layer of the onion, something called transgenerational inheritance. It's this idea that we're unconsciously carrying stuff that isn't even ours, like the unresolved dramas, the secrets, the traumas of our family tree. Our body becomes the theater for a play that started generations before we were born. So how does this happen? Well, the sources lay out a few key ways. You might be living out what's called a project sense, an unconscious plan your parents had for you before you were even born. You could be paying a moral debt for something an ancestor did, or you could be showing a family loyalty where you repeat a pattern of suffering out of this deep, hidden love for your family. So what this all means is that your struggle with weight, it might actually be an echo from the past. You could be unconsciously representing an ancestor, maybe a grandmother who felt abandoned, or a great uncle who suffered a huge financial loss. Your body becomes the instrument trying to finally bring their unresolved story into the light. Okay, so if we're saying weight is a story, then the million-dollar question is, how do you rewrite it, right? Well, that's where this whole process of deprogramming comes into play. It's laid out as a four-step journey. First, you have to become conscious of the program. You got to identify the wound or the family story you're carrying. Then you work on releasing all that trapped emotion from the past. Step 3 is about actively changing how you see that past event. And finally, and this part is absolutely key, you have to take new action. The sources are really clear on this. There is no healing without action. And here's why this part is so important. The unconscious doesn't really speak in words, right? It speaks in symbols, in images, in feelings. So to fix the problem, you have to talk to it in its own language. And that's where these powerful symbolic rituals come in. So the first ritual is all about bringing this stuff out into the open. You literally write out a specific declaration by hand. It's an act that takes the information from your unconscious and makes it real, makes it conscious. You're declaring your freedom from these old programs. Then comes the fire. You take that document you wrote and you burn it. Fire is this ancient, powerful symbol of transformation and purification. By turning that paper, that old contract, into ash, you're sending a really potent message to your unconscious mind. This story is over. It's gone. For good. And for the final step, you take those ashes and you bury them. This does two things. It's a message that says, hey, this old story is done. It's in the past. It's not accessible anymore. But it's also like planting a seed. You're clearing the ground so that a new story, one that you choose consciously, can finally begin to grow. You see, the whole point of all this work is to get to a state of what they call coherence. It's that beautiful state where your inner world is finally in sync with your outer world. When what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do are all telling the same story, your body just doesn't need to shout anymore. So, we'll leave you with that thought. What if your body isn't a problem you need to solve? What if it's an invitation to just listen? An invitation to discover a story that's been waiting, maybe for a very long time, to finally be heard, to be understood, and to be rewritten.